Right, in this video, I'm gonna draw peonies. I have to draw peonies. I'm gonna do a quick small video for Instagram as well. So if you see me using a phone, I'm filming for Instagram as well. So it's something that you also need to guys do, is when you do whatever you do, just document that on Instagram and share with the world. Yeah, this is how I do, this is why I do, blah, 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 blah. So try to do everything double or triple, yeah? So it's me using for the drawing for the school and drawing for these. And maybe I'll put this video on YouTube as well so people can also learn from YouTube, which means quadruple or whatever. So how to draw peonies. So mostly when I sketch with the red. Let's say we draw a black work peonies. I always start with two circles. One is the middle and the second one is how far the outside can go. Because if you think of a peony is just like a little ball with petals wrapping around each other, this would be where the stem comes out. And then the line here is basically where the last petal, that was the outside petal, if you would open fold it, it basically grows up to like there. And that's this petal here is how far we go here. And because all the petals come from this end, like this moment here, they all need to be the same length. I do like to keep my bowl like still like a bowl. So let's say this is where the petals are, the outside one will wrap around. And before I do any petals, what we mostly draw is a three-way petal. So let's say this is the big middle, and then you have a smaller one here, a smaller one there, or you can just draw like this, kind of the same. And obviously you can improvise with adding like little bit bigger folds and some smaller ones in the middle, but eventually just 1, 2, and then 3 sections. So first I sketch this, and then we're gonna desaturate and do it again. Essentially we do one and then another one, and because it's just a sketch we can draw stuff on top of each other. The big ones here would block the small ones inside, but here they don't get blocked, so you would see a few more smaller ones underneath there, as in like multiple smaller layerings. And when you draw the outside ones, they can only go that far, yeah, only that far. And then I would recommend to like play around, to have some in front, some behind, see how it goes, and then if you don't like it you can just erase, but play around. The job is to make it like unevenly even, make it like kind of busy, because this flower is like a almost like onion. It has so many layers. These flowers are so busy, and of course it's kind of cool to like draw some back inwards. And then the busier we make these flowers, the cooler they look. At least in my world, I like to make stuff busy. I like to have a lot going on. I don't like simple stuff. And then for the middle, I do like to draw loads of busy stuff. It's kind of like depending which angle you draw, like 3/4 or more from above. And as you can see, everything looks pretty good. We got all that inside the circle, which makes sense, because like I said before, when you have the flowers like this, and if they were just open, they can only go that far. They can't physically go suddenly too long. It's something that we do in Neotrad. We over exaggerate stuff, but when it comes to like black work and stuff like this, we don't push the limits that way. And with a little time skip, we can see that now it starts to look like a flower. And every small line here that we pull down, they all go to that middle part, which would be probably about there, I would say. And that's where the stem touches that, and then the stem would like grow out there. Makes sense? Yeah, that goes to the stem, and that's where all they grow out, and all these small lines would go to that point. So now we're gonna take a layer and we're gonna desaturate this to about there, so you can barely see. We make a new one, and then I'm gonna switch to black color, and this is where we draw for real. Black work is a style where in black work we can allow details, so we're gonna make it detailed but clean. Where if you go to different styles like ornamental and stuff like that, you would go super clean. But because this is not that crazy of a clean style, we can go busy, detailed, and clean. And it kind of looks odd where we have just the outer lines without the small ones. I would say the small ones is what really makes the day and makes the flowers look like flowers. Sometimes I draw with the outer one, and I have like a less pressure, and I just pull lines in here just to make myself like happier. So let's say that comes out. But yeah, mostly I would treat these petals in like threes. So we got like the one section there, the middle section there, and the small section there. And that's kind of been my guide throughout all this time. So let's say this is the one, this is the third, no, the second, and then this would be the third, which let's say goes there, turns around, makes a bump, does again, and then comes back here. And then that splits in like 3, and it all kind of makes sense. But of course you can like play around. You don't have to like follow exactly word by word what I say. You can still create your own version of it. This is probably what we do with like, well, I do it in black work where I can go clean, I can go wobbly, I can go detailed. Gives us like variety. Let's say that turns in and that turns in that, and then we got one, and then this is second, and then we make third. Peonies are really big flowers in Japan. If I'm not wrong, it means the most beautiful. So therefore they're being used everywhere, in tattoos, in pottery, wallpapers, just paintings, everywhere. I guess they didn't have roses, because I would like to know what would happen if they would see a rose. Would they still agree with that, or would they not? Would they still choose peonies? Because I can see that Europe and America, they're being quite crazy about roses, but then weirdly enough, no one really tattoos that much roses as much as they do peonies. I think it's because peonies allows us to be more creative, have more. There's more to it. Petals are going crazier. Roses are a little bit less. There's less to bend. Just like at the petal counts, they don't have that many. Well, as many as peonies do. Busy. Loads of lines. As you can see, I do like a one big and then a small one, a bigger one, a small one, a bigger one, a small one. Like a bigger and then fold and then bigger and a little fold. It gives a little bit more natural kind of uneven evenness. If you make it like too perfect, then it starts to look like a different style, I would say. I was going to say wrong, but in different styles we do the wrong. So now that's how it looks out with the outer lines, and now let's draw the small ones inside. With the small ones, what I naturally do, well, mainly what I do is when I tattoo people, I don't really draw small ones. So literally I would just print that out and I would just go for it. I would not even make anything more than that, because when you have these small lines, the really thin baby lines almost, they're so fine, not always stencil printer sees them. So that's not the thing. See, when I was pulling lines kind of neat, I was holding the pen lower. But then to do longer lines, I literally go there, hold it like higher, and then it allows us to do longer and cleaner strokes. If you hold here, well, you can, but then you have to like move your whole arm more, which is kind of cool. That's what we do when we tattoo. But to draw, I would just hold my pencil from here to like here, just so I can like fly through this more. Because sometimes the only reason I would do these small thin lines is if I need to like sell this to a client. Like the people who trust me and people who I have tattooed them like so many times, they wouldn't question me. They'd be like, yeah, you do you. And therefore I would just not print any small lines. But the people who have not been to me, I do draw these small lines, because then instantly it kind of sells. It makes it look cooler, makes it more readable, clients can understand, and it's kind of better. So I naturally just decrease the pressure that I pull my hand, because if we hold in a natural, in a standard pressure, this is where it goes exactly as the outer lines, which is what we don't need. So I would just have less pressure against the iPad, and then it just draws like that. Second is, try not to draw just like basic down, because that's what everybody does. And then the worst what you could do is draw straight down. As in people do that, people just do this, which makes no sense. Like it physically makes no sense, because it folds. Like if the petals here are growing around this ball, yeah, this ball is called the flower. Let's say there's this, and then we have some breaking points, so it kind of looks like a little bud now. Yeah, I think you can see that. Let's say this one, this here wants to open. It would become about here-ish. Yeah, it opens. And then for this to open, it would grow to like there. Yeah, it gets wider and wider and wider, which means it still has the curvature. Yeah, and then let's say if this goes all the way down, it almost goes backwards and starts to grow like this. Yeah, so that's how it goes backwards. So it goes from here to here to here, and then backwards. And then if there's one underneath, let's say that's him, like dead, it still would curve. It's still like everything around the flowers needs to be curved, nothing straight. Let's say if you undo this, so we curve them. Yeah, you curve in and then we pull down, and then all this line still would go to this imaginary circle. I probably need to say down the phone. So when we make these small little lines, they need to go all the way to that line, and then next one as well, and then next one as well. So they can't be here parallel. They need to be in a different angles to aim for that. See? So that's that. And then this will go down and turn around and go back to this. That's how it goes. And I would say at the beginning it makes no sense. You kind of play around. You're thinking, I kind of understand, kind of no. It's hard to understand. But but that's normal. That's what literally every single person that does peonies have been through, has gone through, and still goes through. And the more you bend them, the more you twist them, the more you move them, the harder it gets. But at some point you just get used to it and you're like, yeah, it goes that way, and that's it. And then it becomes like super, like second nature. It's not that big of a deal. But I would say for the students, because I'm drawing this photo to the school, I'm gonna make these small lines. It'll be easier for them to kind of go through, easier to understand, easier guidance. And then let's say if we want to have some lines darker, some areas darker, what we do is we just add more lines. So you add more here, and let's say a few more there, instantly it goes darker. So that's how we control the darkness. We add more lines, and we take lines off or decrease the amount of lines in that specific area. And then we have line there, which I forgot, which would go the back and come here. Yeah, makes sense. I guess I made that line as that line then. Cool. So this is this coming back down and comes out here, and then it goes there, turns around and comes back here. Yeah, makes sense. It needs to be the same line, like that goes parallel, comes around and then goes here, goes there, turns around, comes here. Makes sense? Yeah, all these lines have to make sense. Of course you can add more just for the darkness sake, but overall it still needs to be making sense 99% of the time. And then these middle ones, you will kind of have the sense of feeling the more you do, but essentially it goes there, turns around, goes to this guy. Makes sense? And then same with it, comes outside, follows all the curve and goes to this guy. All of them. But I know it's kind of the dots is there. Why would I pull a line up? But it needs to make the full circle to get there. Yeah, it needs to curve around all these lines, because in a sense these petals are just overgrowing each other and going on top of each other, so they kind of need to be parallel, but with a slight change of degrees. So they're not really parallel, but they are. And then to emphasize some like bolder or more folds, I just do a double or triple line in some specific areas, and that makes it like darker. And then again goes in and goes in and goes in and goes in, and then it goes in and then it goes in. So because this is like kind of pointless activity in a sense, even if you guys print this out, there's a chance that you might not see these small lines on the printer just because they're really small. So therefore I just don't even do them, and I just tattoo them on. When I would tattoo these, the outer lines that we just did, the big ones, the bolder ones, the stronger ones, I would do them with the black. But when I do these thin ones, I use medium, nothing darker than medium or light ink, gray, and then it looks really soft. So it would look like something like this, where you have a black, but then it heals, and then you have these really chill, calming fold lines that they are there, but they're not screaming on you. And then it allows you to go like just darken up the areas, make some areas darker, but they don't look black. They just look darker. They look settled darker, which is kind of what we need. And like with a pencil, if you go 2, 3, 4 times more over, it gets darker and darker and darker. So, but if you go with a black, the area just gets like heavy black, like black, which is not what we need. Some areas you do need, of course, but majority of the time when you do blackwork flowers, I would recommend to go with mediums and lights to build up, and then have a black area somewhere hidden. Not hidden, but have it. So, and then what I like to do in the middle is I would draw these lines inwards. It's just something I always done because there's nothing else you can do. At least I think there's not much to do. All these flowers are pretty small anyway. They would end up being small. So therefore, all I'd like to do is bring in like stuff like this. Whereas I go like full around circle, pulling towards the middle, kind of bending them. And then I just fill gaps with something smaller, and then a bit smaller, and then another one, and another one, and then a bit smaller here, and then a bit smaller there. Kind of walking around in circle, adding in. And then when I tattoo, I would just go and do them quite dark. As in like the background doing dark like this. Maybe not black, but dark. It would need to be quite dark. And because we have dark there, I would do like dark in corners, and then it would all balance out itself. It wouldn't be just one black area somewhere. But essentially that's about it. The blackwood flowers in my idea is they need to be rough. They shouldn't be too clean because they kind of symbolize how nature is. It's just turned into a graphic illustration of nature. Ornamental and stuff like that, that's where you have to go posher, you have to go cleaner, you have to go more precise, which is probably what we're going to do in a different video. But when it comes to black work, I would just keep it like just black work. And then let's say here, for example, because this is the bottom, we would need to add more shading. what we do is we just naturally add more lines. And when you add more lines, it looks busier, but because it's busier, it looks darker, and because it's darker, it makes it look like a shading. And then by having more line work in there specifically, boom, instantly you know that's the bottom, that is underneath, and it's easier to understand. Same like here, where we had more line work, specifically that area, and then specifically like here, maybe there. Suddenly this area is a little bit darker. To make this area, for example, stand more behind it, again we add more lines, and before you know, that area is darker, it looks behind. Let's say this area here, we want to add more darkness, we add more lines in there, which they still need to be making sense. Yeah, they can't just be any direction, they still need to make sense. And by adding more line work in here, we will ensure that this is more inside and it becomes the shading. And obviously then you do with the shading, but for line work itself, this is how we can make depth just using lines. And then I should finish that Instagram video. And by adding more line work here and there, we can make it more like a shaded areas, adding more depth. But that's about it for line work. This is how I draw blackwork peonies. Probably next video we're gonna draw ornamental peonies. How to draw peonies. So that's it. I reckon I can push this on a side, and then you can see in this how we went from that to that. And obviously if you add more heavier line work, you can do that. If you want to add thinner line work, you can do that. With these kind of flowers and this kind of style, the limitations are endless.